and all I got was the silly flag, right? Yeah, let's do it.
Madness sweatshirt.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is William Iuzi. I'm president of the Board of Education. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Iannuzzi?
Here.
Ms. Marius Brooks? Here. Ms. Lewis?
Here.
Ms. Castellano Minaya? Here. Ms. Clayton Fernandez? Ms. Ross? Mr. Single?
Here.
Mr. Vega? Ms. Williams? A quorum is present.
Colleagues, can I get a motion and second to go immediately into executive session to meet with District Council and discuss the employment history of particular persons, which may lead to the employment of a particular person?
So moved. Castellano?
Second Lewis.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We should be back around 7 o'clock to reconvene the public session of the meeting.
while you're coming back, just grab the mic. All of them?
I can see it.
You can see it?
Yeah. You know what, maybe move it a little bit more over here. So it's like directly between these two chairs in the corner.
Move it a little bit.
So it's like, so no matter what, their eyes aren't gonna block it. They're gonna be putting here and here. That's great. I'm gonna grab the mic so you grab all of them.
2. Mic check 1, 2, 3. Testing. All right. Testing 1, yeah. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is William Iannuzzi. I'm President of the Board of Education, and we are about to reconvene the public session of the meeting. Colleagues, can I get a motion and second to reconvene the public session of the meeting?
Second, Ross.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the next item on our agenda is our recognition of retirees, and I'm going to throw it over to Dr. Reynolds for this portion of the agenda.
Thank you very much, President Iannuzzi. Good evening to everyone, either here in person, watching from home, or watching at a later date. This evening, under the leadership of our Human Resources Department and our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Ms. Joan Garone, our Executive Director for Human Resources, Ms. Tracy Jackson, our district was able to recognize all of the retirees who will be leaving this district in a physical form, but not in spirit. And we were blessed with recognizing our 47 retirees for this year. It was calculated with the amount of years of service that they've given to the school district of New Rochelle. It equated to 1,188 years of service to our children. So let's acknowledge all of our retirees. And tonight, in the audience, we are privileged to have two of our retirees. We would like to recognize them in person. So my mother always taught me to start ladies first. So we are going to start with our TA extraordinaire, Miss Ottilia Taylor Tanner. Please stand and be acknowledged for your service. Thank you very much for all that you have done for, not just for the children of New Rochelle, but for the families of New Rochelle. We appreciate you. Thank you. Also joining us is somebody who has a title that you may not even recognize. How many people know what a glazer is? Okay. For those of you who can't see at home, most of the audience raise their hand. So I think the only reason why they know what a glazer is because of the person that we're about to recognize. So we would like to congratulate Mr. Anthony Newman on his years of service to the city school district of New Rochelle. Thank you so much, sir. It must be noted that, and I shared this earlier with our retirees and their supporters and family members, that I acknowledge the fact that we have such a large number of retirees because so many of them chose this year to retire in order to save room or make room for additional personnel to keep their jobs this year. And that is not, it's not taken lightly, and I want to thank those who made that decision for that purpose. But for all of you who are retiring, if you're watching at a later date or watching from home, I want to congratulate you on not the end of the road, but the beginning of the rest of your lives. And again, I'm going to put in a plug. We need substitutes. So if you are interested, please do not hesitate to come to the Human Resources Department, sign up to be a substitute, and we will help you make a schedule that is happy and fitting for yourself as well as for your family. But thank you for all of your service to the City School District of New Rochelle. Let's give them another round of applause.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reynolds. Congratulations to all of our retirees. Our next item on the agenda is announcements by our Board of Education members. So does any of my colleagues have any announcements or comments they'd like to make?
I do. I would like to say congratulations, Ms. Ottilia Tanner, and thank you so much for everything you do for the children and the adults in the district. And Mr. Anthony Newman, on the same day, and our mothers were in the same room after we were delivered. So, congratulations. I'll be following you soon in retirement. Anybody else want to make any announcements?
Seeing none, we're gonna move on to Dr. Reynolds' superintendent's report.
Thank you, good evening again. We have some really great news about our students, and I'm ever impressed with what it is that New Rochelle schools offer on an everyday basis to our students. We are actually beginning to work in a consortium with other school districts through our local BOCEs. And in order to be considered for this consortium in offering of programming, we had to submit a list of all of the advanced placement courses as well as our dual enrollment courses that we offer here in Rochelle. And when we reviewed the information on last week at my superintendent's meeting at BOCES, we greatly outnumber most of our counterparts, even those who are a lot more financially stable than we are. So that is a testament to what it is that we are offering to our students. You know, there has been some concern and conversations related to the budget and our removal of some of our honors programs. Keeping in mind that honors classes are locally determined. Honors classes have a weighting system that's determined by the local school district. When you send your transcripts out to colleges, colleges may not recognize an honors class as such. They may not give that full recognition of credits. But there is no disputing which classes are advanced placement classes and which classes are dual enrollment classes. Those are actual college credit-bearing classes. That is the reason why we as a district are opening up enrollment to our advanced classes, advanced placement and dual enrollment, and we are working away from the local honors programs as in our high school. But to be recognized for their hard work, we have quite a few announcements this evening. Our journalism students from New Rochelle High School have been recognized in the New York Times for their insightful responses to the publication's Student Opinion Prompts. As part of their coursework, journalism teacher Jolene Musso requires students to respond to 3 student opinion prompts each marking period. When their comments are selected, they are featured in the weekly articles on the current events conversation section on the New York Times website. This ongoing assignment encourages students to engage with current events, develop their voices, and contribute to public discourse. Seniors Zaira Baragan, Anika Bhattacharya, Aubrey Burrell, Braden Casas, Leah Cohen, Grace Gauckman, and Alexia Villegas Jimenez stood out for their thoughtful submissions and were selected to be featured on the New York Times website. Let's give those students. Our New Rochelle High School's first-year science research students delivered a standout performance at the Somer Science Fair on this past Saturday, earning an impressive 17 awards, including 6 first-place finishes in their debut competition. The Somer Science Fair is a prestigious poster competition exclusively for first-year science research students from high schools across Westchester County, and this year drew nearly 800 participants from 37 schools. New Rochelle students achieved top placements across a range of categories. In the category of behavior, first place, Max Strasberg, Penny Conway, Lucas Palchik, Daria Hadgos, and Ashley Tatarka. Third place, Sanaa Suri, Ari Rueda, Taryn Paul, Janita Latif. In the category of physics, first place, Kalichi Nojoku, and second place, Paul Gallagher. In the category of animal science, second place, Zach Schwartz. In the category of cell and molecular biology, second place, Dylan Erber. And third place, Devin Ferrucci. And in the category of medicine and health, second place, Emily Sadlin, Elnaz Sadeghi, and third place, Ojeki Idima. Let's give our students a round of applause. Again, keeping in mind, these are first-year students in our science research program, and they're already racking up awards. Our New Rochelle High School junior, Alexei Sulintinsky, won the Section 1 Boys Tennis Singles Championship on May 27th at Harrison High School. He captured his first singles title after finishing third last year. He is currently ranked first among 16-year-olds in the United States. He is currently ranked number 1 among 16-year-olds in the United States. To take the championship, Alex defeated Scarsdale Sam Saeed 6-1, 6-1. His next challenge is the New York State Boys Tennis Individual Championships, which will be held from Friday through Sunday at the U.S. Tennis Association Billie Jean King National Tennis Center in Queens. And if you know, you know. So let's give Alex a round of applause and wish him a great and healthy career. Now we move from academics to sports, now we're going to art. Artwork created by New Rochelle High School senior Leah Cohen has been selected for the prestigious I Create 2025 exhibition at the Bruce Museum located in Greenwich, Connecticut. This is the second consecutive year in which New Rochelle High School student art has made the cut for the exhibit. Last year, works by Sophia Freitzel and Nola Brooks, class of 2024, were exhibited. The I Create exhibit showcases the work of high school students in Fairfield County and surrounding counties in Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York, and will run from June 8th until September 7th. Leah created the work titled Beauty Engulfed in her advanced placement 2B class as part of her individualized portfolio. It is accompanied by her statement reflecting on how do we intertwine with our environment? Are we consumed by nature, or does nature consume us? This piece was also chosen as a regional gold key winner for the 2024 Scholastic Art Awards, presented by the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers. The nation's longest running and most prestigious recognition, signifying exceptional achievement and a strong portfolio. Leah's artwork will be eligible for the People's Choice Award at the I Create exhibit. This is a digital exhibition of work of all 700 students submitted, including about 50 New Rochelle High School AID and AP 2B students. And all of our students will be included both online and on a rotating screen at the exhibition. So let's give our students in the field of art a round of applause. Across the district, the Green Schools Committee held its third annual Green Fair on May 21st in New Rochelle High School. Now, this is for students from all of our schools across the district, not just our New Rochelle High School students. This event showcased initiatives from Green Club members from each of our elementary schools and middle schools, and the Green Schools Committee, which was formed in 2022 to promote healthy and sustainable practices in our school buildings, encouraged energy conservation and foster growth in environmental education for our students. Students from the New Rochelle High School Garden Club and Beekeeping Club, as well as the newly formed Sustainability and Environmental Civic Action Subcommittee, say that all over the track. The newly formed Sustainability and Environmental Civic Action Subcommittees presented their initiatives, and students showcased topics such as aquaponics, which was from Columbus and New Rochelle High School Garden Club, beekeeping and honey extraction from the New Rochelle Beekeeping Club, composting from Columbus, Davis, Isaac E. Young, Jefferson, New Rochelle High School Garden Club, gardening from the Trinity School, cafeteria food waste from Albert Leonard Middle School, native plant and tree planting at the Water School, plastic pollution from Trinity and Webster, protecting the Long Island Sound from Jefferson School, and seed saving from the New Rochelle Garden Club. So we are making sure that we are creating students who have a mindset on sustainability and protecting our environment, and that's a very good thing to have in this day and age. Lastly, and most hugely, 3 New Rochelle High School students earned international recognition at the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair, also known as ISEF 2025. This is the world's most prestigious science competition for high school students. It was held on May 10th through 16th in Columbus, Ohio, and it features over 1,600 finalists from more than 60 countries, each invited after earning top honors at regional or national science fairs. In a historic achievement, junior Corey Sullenfraud became one of the few students from Westchester County ever to win a first place award at ISEF. Let's give Corey a round of applause. He further made history by earning an additional grand prize award, one of the fair's most prestigious honors, the $10,000 Peggy Scripps Award for Science Communication, one of just 8 grand prizes awarded exclusively to first place winners across categories. The Scripps Award recognizes the finalists who most effectively conveys the significance and real-world relevance of their research to a broad audience. Corey's selection for his award from a pool of over 1,650 students highlights not only the strength of his project, but also his exceptional clarity, poise, and communication skills. His research was entitled The Prisoner's Dilemma, Strategy Dynamics Related to Memory and Selfishness, uses advanced simulations and mathematical modeling to examine how memory influences cooperation and repeated strategic interactions. The findings have potential implications for how both humans and AI systems can build trust, promote collaboration, and achieve shared positive outcomes. Not to be outdone, junior Scarlett Hartzman was awarded the New American University ISIS Scholarship from Arizona State University. This is a renewable, merit-based award up to $32,000, renewable for 4 years. Let's give Scarlett a round of applause. Her project, Traversing Mars, the Noctis Landing Human Exploration Zone, used satellite imagery and terrain modeling to develop safe, rover-accessible routes between key scientific landmarks on the Martian surface. Now, I still use GPS to get from City Hall to New Rochelle High School. Our kids are mapping out pathways on Mars. We need to acknowledge the greatness of these young people. Carlos de Aguila, also a junior, earned his place at ISEF through his performance at WESF. And although he did not receive additional awards at ISEF, Carlos described the experience as transformative, mainly because of his connections with like-minded researchers worldwide. All 3 students are part of New Rochelle High School's rigorous 3-year science research program, co-directed by Jeff Butler and Erica Curran. The program allows students to conduct original, mentor-guided research in fields ranging from neuroscience and behavioral science to engineering and environmental science. The 2025 ISEF results mark the most decorated year in the program's history and the 2nd consecutive year in which New Rochelle High School science researchers have set new records for top awards and scholarships. So let's give the program a round of applause. And lastly, to our families, please be reminded that all schools and offices will be closed on Thursday, June 19th in honor of Juneteenth. We hope that you have a happy and safe rest of the school year, and we are looking forward to our moving up and graduation ceremonies, which are right around the corner. And with that, I turn it back over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reynolds. So the next item on our agenda are discussion items. We do not have a presentation tonight, but there are 3 policies that we need to discuss and have a first reading. All 3 of these policies are mandated by law, and there are a time frame where we have to actually pass these policies as designated by New York State education law. So the first policy we'll be talking about tonight is policy number 2245, ex officio student member of the board. So we currently already have a policy 2245, it was our student liaison policy that we passed in 2022. So this is an update to this policy with new stuff added when the governor's budget just passed.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to have these next points of conversation in conjunction with our policy committee leadership through Trustee Valerie Williams, Trustee Nikita Lewis, Trustee Sam Single, and Trustee Rashmi Ross. We've had conversation related to the requirement now by law that the school district adopts a different opportunity for students, rather than just the liaison, but moving towards an ex officio board member. I must go on record to say that I do have some reservation about this new requirement that is a state requirement, state requirement. My reservation is not in truncating student voice. My reservation is putting a student in a position where they may become, where they may be attacked by public entities, by being associated with a decision that's made by a board. So I want to be very clear that the law states ex officio, and the definition of an ex officio member is someone who does not have voting rights. And a part of the policy for consideration states that this position does not have any access to executive content, which would be executive session or any of the documents that are not public documents. So I want everyone to realize that it's a very limited position that is being placed, but for a good reason. We want to ensure that students understand what civic duty is and start to live in its reality from an early stage. So what we have decided to do is to adopt, because we are required to adopt this policy by July 1. We're adopting what's considered to be the New York State School Boards Association foundation policy, and then we will build it as we go along to make it more Near-Shelvian. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our policy committee leadership for any conversation.
I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for our students, but I do agree with Dr. Reynolds. I am concerned about the students being treated in an appropriate way. But as a board, I'm looking forward to working on a plan for orientation and training, offering student support and communication tools, and offering a student engagement framework, and also ensuring equity in selection in the person who is our student school board member.
Just to add on to what she was saying, just for folks that are at home in terms of what this process looks like, the policy committee came together and we were able to read this ahead of time and ask a handful of questions to the team and talk about what this might mean or look like according to what, as Dr. Reynolds mentioned, the state is requiring of us. And so we did speak about, we was just mentioned the selection process, whether it would be through student government, et cetera. But we also want to make sure that there was going to be flexibility as this is enacted so that we can pivot as necessary to make sure that our students are protected while still being able to share their voice and the voice of their peers. And so we did talk about that amongst ourselves quite a bit. I'll turn the mic back over, but just to give folks an idea of the different types of topics, we talked about how they were chosen, we talked about whether or not they'd be serving during the summer, et cetera. There are different provisions that the state allows us to play with, but we wanted a
that time. And then also, like, right now is campaign season for student body president here at the high school, so I've been able to see some of the campaign flyers, and a lot of the candidates running have some great ideas, and I know some of them are saying, like, to be more in touch with the board and what we are doing. The one question I have, it says select one of the following of how we're going to select the ex officio student board members. Are we narrowing that down tonight, or are we leaving it vague like that?
If I may, through the policy committee chair, I would recommend leaving it vague, so as we get proposals from the high school, that we can narrow it down to be what it is that we would like to have in place. But I think that you know, if you study policy law, the more vague the policy, the better, because it allows you to make changes to your practices without having to open up your policy again for readoption.
And was that, because I was on the policy committee, but our council reviewed it and said that would be applicable to the law?
Yes, so council was present at all of our policy meetings. They reviewed it beforehand. It was also, this policy was created by NISBA council as well. So it is the most appropriate policy for your foundation as can be.
I just want to add one more quick question to Mike over. Not only do we have this as a resource, but we also have the Westchester School Board Association that helps us through a number of different topics, and it's also going to be reaching out to us when they're ready in terms of what homework is look like and what resources we can provide to the students they're going to serve, so we can prepare them for what they're stepping into.
I'm so excited about this policy. I know that it has a profound impact. So often, I think about how powerful it is to see a board of education. We represent all different walks of life, different neighborhoods, different demographics of New Rochelle, different lived experiences. 9 of us come together with all different opinions, backgrounds, and yet we are a model of respect and critical thinking, pushing each other's thinking, finding ways to come to consensus, and truly this is such a beautiful model for democracy and coming together in the service of kids. What I like most about this policy is the part where it says that an ex officio student member of the board is expected to solicit input from students on matters impacting the district at the direction of the board. But I also am excited because I have seen kids as young as pre-K and kindergarten be able to do qualitative and quantitative research studies and collect data. I mean, my fifth graders themselves this year created a Google form where they collected stories and data about bullying in my school. And I think that it's so powerful to be able to have student voice in the decision making that we do as a board in service of students. So I am excited about this. I do agree that it'll be a learning curve. We will want to make sure that, you know, it's a huge, huge position. And it will be a challenge for a student to try to represent the entire high school, but this is also such a great opportunity for them to flex their leadership skills and even come up with their own plan of action to elicit feedback and ideas from students. And my ask of this board and of our future board members is that we truly listen to what the students have to say, because we will be such a stronger school district if we are able to humbly listen to our students who will tell us their truth and give us advice on how to better represent and support them.
So I too am really excited about this policy and share the reservations that were expressed by Dr. Reynolds and my board colleagues about the vulnerability of the student that might be in this role. As a parent, I think about when I come home from board meetings and I say, you know, it was a tough public comment today, but I'm grown up. And I think that I would really ask for our community to just be extra mindful of having a student present week in, week out, as we think about what their experience would be like in this space. So I just want to reiterate that request and for us all to be really extra mindful of that. put toward the elected options, which is either student president of the high school or somebody selected by the student government, and if necessary, the other options, so still leaving the possibility, but indicating our preference for that to be a more representative democratic process. Well, I open that up to my colleagues for discussion, but I think not because of particular leadership in the principal or superintendent, but rather the idea that this position should be seen as independent of school personnel or the superintendent, and so, you know, as we elected school board members are represented by our constituencies, I would say that I have a preference for the student also being able to be elected unless there's a compelling reason otherwise.
I think I would piggyback that. We also discussed that in our policy meeting in terms of it being a from the student government, but wanting to be that flexible, as it says, for if we need to. And I also just to piggyback off what you were saying in terms of protecting them being on the dais and in an unfortunate situation, we obviously hope that does not happen, but wanting to keep them shielded from that as we go into this next school year, but still allowing them to share their opinions, but not be privy to any of the things that we are. Because like I said, we are elected officials, we've chosen to be here, and we're adults, and we can handle it, but I don't want our students to have to accept that visual as well.
I'm wondering, is there an opportunity for us to get feedback from the current student government, whether through the administration to see what they, whether the outgoing seniors or riders, what they might think this would look like?
I think there is any opportunity for that. I think the wording of the current recommended draft budget leaves it open enough that we can solicit that over the summer. Currently, the law states that the student does not have to serve during the summer months either. And with the understanding that this is first being implemented, well, this is being implemented for the first time this year, we also have a little bit more of a runway towards the beginning of the year, so there can still be conversation with our high school body in September, and with the potential for it to start in October without us violating the law or the intent of the law.
And I don't necessarily disagree with kind of keeping it open, because I do think, to your point, Dina, is I think we can always have that, right? And if we can have that be, that's just generally how it runs, like the student body kind of based on whatever feedback we receive from them, that's part of their, they can have an election in September, and then it's just sort of the final approval by the principal, whoever, that it's been joined our board. But I think it still leaves a possibility that it can run in a democratic process for our students regardless.
So I would just push back and say, I don't think that the principal should have veto power on who the student body votes for, personally. This is just, I mean, I'm just giving my own, I mean, I'm not suggesting again that I think that as a matter of representation, I'm not sure we want to get to the place where the representative has to be okayed by the principal or the superintendent.
We don't have to decide that.
So yeah, this is the first reading, we're just talking about it. At our next meeting, we will do the second reading and adopt the policy, but we can always adjust it throughout the year whenever we feel that it's necessary to. Does anyone have any more comments or questions about this policy? Okay, seeing none. Our next policy is the first reading of policy number 5695, students and personal electronic devices. Girls, let me throw this one over to you.
I'm going to get myself in trouble here. I have been very vocally opposed to this policy or the creation of this law. This law is now prescribed and it is actually connected to state funding. We must adopt this law by July 1 in order for us to be considered to be fully compliant. The provisions of this law is that all students in a New York State public school must not have any access to to any electronic device that has internet capability from the moment they step into school until the moment they leave school. Also, a part of this provision is we must post very clearly on our website how parents can get in contact with their students during the school day if necessary. This is almost going back in time to a time where there were not cell phones. That's almost how we have to look at it. I'm telling the public now that if you want to get in contact with your students, you're going to have to call the main office. The main office will determine how they're going to get the student to you on the phone. My concern with this is another opportunity for there to be an interaction between a young person and an adult that could lead to a consequence. And I understand the reason behind the proposal of the bill was to disconnect our students from, the lines of social media. So I want to address that and state that I understand that, and I also support that. My concern, though, is that by disconnecting our students from their electronic devices for an entire day is only going to increase what's considered to be nexus events. So state law prescribes that any event that occurs, whether in person or on social media, that leads to some sort of a disagreement or unwanted behavior in the school the next day is considered a nexus event. And the school district has the responsibility of addressing those events. My own personal feeling is that by students not having their phones, it's just going to increase some behaviors at the end of the day. But with that being said, I'm going to stop my editorializing. The state law says that we must preclude students from having access to internet-enabled devices. That includes cell phones, it includes smartwatches, it includes iPod devices, if you want to go back that far. It includes, if they're interactive. It also includes Angel Sense devices. So for those of our families who have Angel Sense devices on their students, you would be in violation of the law if you send those Angel Sense devices to school with our students. So this is creating a difficult situation which we're going to have to kind of unravel as a school district. As of right now, there's no prescription in this policy that dictates how you collect those devices or where you store those devices. And I'm kind of grateful for that. At this point, I'm going to ask our schools in our meetings to send recommendations on how they are going to address this, and we will look at what best practices are and develop it as we go along. Again, this is a New York State School Boards Association recommended policy that we are going to consider, and it is a starting point for us to build what our programming will look like as it relates to electronic devices in schools. So with that, I open up the conversation.
So I just have a question. The internet enabled, so we have Chromebooks, which are internet enabled.
So the prescription of the policy of the law does not apply to any school-provided technology devices that are utilized for instruction. So that's the key. But anything else that is student-owned, household-owned, should not be utilized unless, and there are some provisions for when they can be utilized by a student, i.e. if the student needs it for a medical reason, right? So we do have individuals who check their blood sugar levels and things of that nature. There has to be a medical reason for it to be on their person and to be in use, but should not be utilized for social media interactions. There's also, if it's IEP dependent, it can be allowed. So there are different provisions that are listed in this policy that prescribes to the law as well.
So for myself, I understand the background of this, and I do support that, making sure students are more connected to learning and education, less on social media. I mean, myself, Dr. Reynolds, and Fuse Leadership earlier this year, we went to Albany together, where we actually heard from the governor herself and school districts, superintendents, students, and medical professionals talking about what this would do if we did a ban like this. And there were students who talked about how it really supported them emotionally and made them want to actually talk to people now in the lunchroom because they can have a device just to stare at. And we heard from the medical professionals about what exactly the benefits of them without social media and the devices on them. I think for a district our size, it gets, I think it's concerning, not concerning, but how we are going to enforce this at recess, at lunchtime, when students have free periods. So I think it's really going to be incumbent upon the building level to really put together some good recommendations for the board to consider. I mean, we've heard from several teachers who already have current classroom policies where students come in, they put in a little cubby or the little calculator thing. One teacher actually had an amazing system where the kids actually have to charge their phones during his class. So all the kids go, they put their phones on the other side of the class, it charges. I mean, it's probably not better for the teacher next period, but for his period it works. And you know, last month, 2 months ago, we had Civics Day where a group of 20 high school students came to City Hall, and Dr. Reynolds and myself, we conducted a mock policy meeting with them about what this type of policy would look like. And I have to say, all of them were not against the idea. They understood why. I think it's what do they get out of it kind of was from it. Like, what incentives are we going to offer? Or like, one student had a suggestion of a contract where like, if everyone in the class abides by this policy, they get a certain amount of extra points or some sort of party at the end or something like that. So I think it's honestly getting creative with a policy like this. And I do ask the parents and community to give grace a little bit while we actually work this out and implement this in the fall.
Just to add on that, in terms of, as you mentioned parents, that came to mind. I am not a parent, but I do know that, assuming that next year you're going to be hearing conversations with your own kids that are going to sound different than this year, given this policy. And so, my personal ask is if parents can help us with this transition, soften the blow in terms of explaining what's here tonight, why it's happening, explain to them what policy, the great example of civics, what policy looks like in your everyday life, and how it's impacting you, and so be able to explain to them what's happening, why, and reinforcing what's going on in school, will help our building leaders soften the blow. And to that point about building leaders, given our size, again, your shells in a different position. There are a lot of districts across New York State that are smaller, and so they've been able to purchase certain devices that can, shut off all signal and everything to the phone for the entire day, and be able to do so. But because of our size, at a building level, a classroom level, even, it's important for them to have their own ways of doing this. This day is not giving money to your shell or to districts across the state to purchase these different types of folders. They're not giving us like endless amounts of money to do these kind of things. So we do have to get creative in that sense.
Just for public edification, so here are the exemptions from this policy, this law as prescribed by New York State. The district may permit the use of internet-enabled devices in the event of an emergency and under the following circumstances. Where necessary to manage a student's health care, i.e. diabetes, asthma, medication, etc. For translation services and/or for students who are routinely responsible for the care and well-being of a family member on a case-by-case basis upon review and determination by the school psychologist, school social worker, or school counselor. Parents may request an exemption for their children to use internet-enabled devices during the school day as listed above. Requests must be made to the building principal, and for healthcare exceptions must include documentation from an appropriate healthcare professional. Students may also be permitted to use their internet-enabled devices the school day on school grounds for specific educational purposes if the following criteria are met. The student has registered the device with the district in accordance with district procedures. With administrative approval, the teacher has authorized the use of specific devices for a particular activity, after which the device must be stowed away per this policy. And the student uses the device to access the internet or authorized applications through the district's network under the terms of policy 4526, computer use and instruction.
Thinking that for execution in classrooms, as we transition this into policy, is there talk of maybe some sort of fail-safe bin that students can off their phones, or like just something, so if they're a young boy with no personal bag and he's got his phone in his pocket, what do we do, accost him, or do we say, you know, here's the gentleman's, to work this out, you know, this is, I mean, are we gonna offer kind of a fail-safe on that?
Trustee, thank you. That's a very good question. I don't have an answer to that yet. Here's why. The first iteration of this law, bell to bell, was determined to be during instructional time, which meant, you know, during class time, which was a little bit more feasible because you could have like the shoe trees up in the room and you just put your phone in the shoe tree and then take it as you leave. If you see it, you know, no one's going to take it if it's in clear sight. But with the advancement of this, the intent of this law, it's now bell to bell, meaning start of the school day to the end of the school day. So even if the student takes that phone, it's on their person, they may be looking at it between class. So this is really what we have to work through. So I'm not sure where we are with that yet.
I think, obviously, our school sizes are different. There are some small schools, we're sitting here in the high school. If we can be, as much consistency as we can have across the schools, particularly the various levels of schools, I think is critical. I don't think we want one school being, you know, students able to put it in their backpacks, another school they're being forced to put them up in the front room. I think it's really important that we try and be consistent across our schools. I think that will prevent one level of potential issues.
I appreciate that, Trustee Siegel, and I think I heard you correctly because in my mind, it's grade bands, right? So elementary school, middle school, and high school, consistency across those bands. I do agree with that. Also, please note that in this policy, the one saving grace that we do have, and I need our parents to be aware of this, is, I don't know where the wording is, but basically, thank you very much. The wording is exactly, generally, the district is not responsible for stolen, lost, or damaged personal and electronic devices brought to school. So, what that means to our families is keep it home. That is basically how the law is written, and that is how the policy is proposed.
So I'd like to note another positive aspect of how it's written, which is that the district may not impose suspension from school if the sole grounds for the suspension is that the student accessed an internet-enabled devices prohibited by this policy. So I'd just like to point out that line, which is a comfort, I will say. The other thing, in the spirit of creativity and empowering our students, as we were just talking about the student ex officio member, is there's a line here that says administrators will also discuss the aims of this policy with students and their parents, et cetera, et cetera. I've also, we've had students write to us about their opinions, and actually there were some incredibly thoughtful, eloquent letters in favor of a ban written by students. I think having as either a research project or a civic engagement to co-create what that kind of education for students who are in violation of, as opposed to just saying don't do it because it's against the rules, really having students talk to each other about the rationale and the point that Mr. Iannuzzi made about having conversations over lunch, et cetera, as opposed to, and I appreciate the frustration that this is a state-imposed though that there are many people in our communities, for whatever set of reasons, who think that this is a good idea, I think putting forward the positive aspects of this policy to students so that it doesn't feel only punitive, but also an opportunity, and really using it as a learning opportunity for students to think of, and our community more broadly, to think about really things that do happen on our phones. And to your point, Dr. Reynolds, and I appreciate it, it would only be a benefit if it overall reduces those kinds of incidents. And that is a worthy goal. Whether or not this policy will achieve it remains to be seen, but it's possible also that students and all of us spending less time on social media and more time in communication with each other and getting into the practice of that, they actually provide a path forward from some of the extremism that we see that is promoted online. And I, for one, think that's a worthy goal. And so I would just encourage us to make some lemonade out of these lemons and think about ways that we can really further the conversation about how do we relate with each other, how do we have dialogue across differences that are not, don't result in us just going to retreat to our corners. So I'm glad that students won't necessarily be penalized to the point of suspension for this alone. And I hope that we will try to make the best of this policy and actually see if we really can move the culture among our young people. And maybe we also can learn a little bit ourselves as adults about the use of phones and being keyboard warriors and that kind of thing. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we can make some good out of this bill.
Well, I'll say thank you very much. I appreciate your optimism. It is, yes, and I'm going to use your allegory, right? At first it was lemons. We're making lemonade. Our job now is to allow our students and our community to help us to add the sugar to the lemonade so that it's enough for us to want to have it. So I think that there's a great opportunity for some growth here. And also an opportunity for our students to see a different side of what school can look like. You know, if nothing else, hopefully it will help with the posture of this generation, right? So that we straighten ourselves up a little bit more rather than being hunched over. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
So the one thing that comes to mind is a little bit of anxiety that I think that children, the students may have with their property. I'm wondering if there's going to be like maybe a volunteer moment with the parents to register their device into a database on the outside chance that it gets crisscrossed because phones are off. I mean, it's just sort of a, you know, that number that register with. You know what I mean? So we don't get into that's not your phone. On the outside chance things get, you know, juggled for different reasons. Just until we work it out. But I do think if we have a volunteer moment for the parents to send in put it into a database, because I think the anxiety of theft of their phones being out of sight is probably gonna kind of hit I think it's gonna kind of hit a rupture scale.
Thank you very much, Trustee. I'll state this in addition. I think a lot of the anxiety is going to be felt by our parents more than by our children. That is something that we are going to have to address and have to figure out how to do that.
And I can see the intent of this law, of this policy, is prioritize a learning environment free of distraction. But there's distraction in the environment anyway, whether it's a phone or just people being in close proximity to each other. And I think that just by putting this ban into place, we're missing a teachable moment in actually using the technology with the students and teaching them how not to be distracted, how they can use it, because they're using it anyway. We're all using it anyway. And also, you know, it might be distracting that you can't use your phone. I think you need to call your parent, you need to talk to somebody, check in on them. So I think like the school, we need to assess, do we have two-way intercoms or one-way are their phones or walkie-talkies so that we can call into the classrooms, or people in the classrooms can call out to the office or to other entities. And also, I don't feel comfortable, being an educator, I don't feel comfortable, even though we're saying, oh, you put your phone away, you put it in a lockbox. I would feel uncomfortable even if we put it in a lockbox or we put it somewhere and someone took someone's phone. And as an educator, I had my phone taken in my classroom. And it was only me and the children in the room. So I'm assuming one of them took my phone. And you know, it's not a good feeling when somebody takes something from you that's very valuable. And also, I'm really wondering how we can use this to teach students how to use technology responsibly. If we say you just can't have it, then you lose an opportunity. And this is 2025, and the cell phones and the internet-enabled devices are not going away. And this policy just references internet-enabled devices, but there are also cellular-enabled devices that students could use.
I just wanted to add really quickly that our teachers have started the process of, in fact, let me know if I'm wrong. But from what I understand, that on the classroom level, our teachers have been teaching them how to be responsible thus far. It's just that through the state, it's now mandatory that from the beginning of the school day to the very end of the school day, and that's really where the challenges lie. Not particularly that our teachers have not really started to have that conversation or teach them that. It's just the way in which this policy is written is the challenge.
I agree with you in your assessment. Our teachers have been fantastic in teaching our students the appropriateness of when and where. Also, what I appreciated was at one point an iteration of this policy, this law, allowed for there to be autonomy in how it was approached on the classroom basis. And our teachers have had autonomy in how cell phones were approached in the classroom. You can put it, you can do the check-in system, you can put it away out of sight, out of mind, you know, things of that nature. Again, my difficulty is with the prescription in itself, not the intent, but I think that we're going to have to walk down this path of discovery together.
I was just going to say, to make sure that it's clear, that this policy is not saying that we are not using technology in our classrooms. I just want to make sure like that myth is dispelled in case anyone was wondering. We still are using technology in our classrooms every single day and innovating, and students are able to create, plan reports and do research and present their learning in creative, unique, innovative ways, and it's happening in STEAM, it's happening in literacy, it's happening in math, science, art, across the board, music too. Every subject area, there's innovation, and our students still are using school-issued devices. But what this policy is getting at is the personal electronic devices that mean that students might be, doom scrolling during the lesson, or even, and I will share as an educator, how distracting it is when students are trying to message their families during the day. And I would say to them too, you're in a school. If you need to call your family or if there's an emergency, you go to the main office, you make a phone call. It's not like we're canceling family communication, but there is a time and there is a place in order to ensure that our students are able to learn and our teachers are able to teach. I do encourage all of us to be sharing feedback as this is rolled out. And again, listening to students, listening to teachers, listening to security staff, listening to administrators, learning more about this, having our families share, and I would hope that we may even consider this being, inviting people to come for public comment, or having different forums where we can together really consider the implications of this and streamline and improve it so that it's meaningful for our students and our staff as we move forward into next year. Does that make sense?
we use this as an opportunity to engage with our families, with our staff, at the building level, and really try to come up with procedures and policies within the school that are supportive of our students, that don't make it onerous on our staff to have to be the enforcers, and for our families as well to feel as though they're actually engaged and part of this, of how we create the policy. It could work into something that could be very special, but I think that we do have to kind of approach it in a very collaborative way, because none of us have the solutions. All we can do is try to come up with ways that we can work and make it work within our community. And so I 100% agree with you, Katie, how do we kind of collaborate with all of our kind of different stakeholders. And I think this is a real opportunity for us to actually really make it happen, because we have sort of what the policy says, what the law says, but there is a bit of interpretation, and if we can come up with something as a school district on how we work collaboratively with all of our stakeholders, I think it could eventually work into something that's very positive.
Okay, along those lines, and I agree with what you said, Ms. Ross. I mean, I think I'm going to guess, especially given this is now being instituted across the state, that a couple of things, there may very well be interesting technological solutions that evolve out of this, where, for example, students can have devices that are authorized by the schools that can be turned on or turned off by a school. There may be things that we can't fully imagine that the market will now create a need for, because there will be all these districts across New York State who are also simultaneously being asked to do the same thing. And along those lines, there will be all kinds of best practices of different districts that I think we as a board, but also and our leadership should be really plugged into. So, for example, the university I work at, the students have requested that we have no phone meal times at the dining halls. That was actually a student request when they realized that when you walk into a dining hall and everyone's sitting there on their phones, it's very hard to go up and talk to someone because everyone feels very inaccessible. So I think there may be creative ways to be thinking about building community within our schools that other districts may be trying out, that we may be trying out. So there may be opportunities for us also to use some information sharing and cross-learning with other districts, because we're not the only district that's going to be facing this. And in fact, there will be districts that are similar in size to ours that will have some of the same kind of challenges in terms of volume, students, et cetera. So, this is to me, and I guess building on what Ms. Ross said, if we come at it with a collaborative learning, mindset, and looking at even what universities and other spaces are doing to make this a positive and not just a negative, I think we can really sweeten that lemonade, Dr. Reynolds.
Yes, we definitely need to comply with New York State education law. And cell phone use in the school building can be problematic, and I'm sure that this law was written because of the complaints from different people. However, just like many policies and laws, they're made by people who are not experiencing the problem directly. So I think moving forward, as was mentioned by a few of my colleagues here, for us to have the dialogue with the students, the parents, and the teachers. Because I think students, parents, and teachers, they might have come up with a different policy, something that was more doable for the people in the building.
Ms. Williams, do any of my colleagues have any comments or questions? Seeing none, the last policy we have our first reading of is policy number 8113, extreme heat condition days. Dr. Reynolds, can I throw that over to you again?
So in New York State law, we have a prescription of how low a temperature can be in a classroom or instructional space that would force us to have to close that space. But there was never one written into existence for how high a temperature needed to be. This extreme heat condition policy is now prescribed by law. The law now states that when a school school space, an instructional space, when the temperature is measured, and the measurements are actually very particular, it's 3 feet from the ground, in the middle of a shaded area of the room, and when it goes above 82 degrees, that several actions need to be taken. One of those could be turning off the overhead lights, pulling down shades or blinds, turning on fans, opening classroom doors and windows to increase circulation, turning off unused electronics that produce heat, which is electronics will turn off anyway, and providing water breaks. But in the event that a space rises to a heat index of 88 degrees, that space needs to be shut down. Now, I think all of our schools have air-conditioned areas. Every one of our schools have air-conditioned areas. Not every area in all of our schools are air-conditioned. So we have to have a plan based on the building of how students can rotate in and out of cooling areas for those temperatures between 82 and 88 degrees. When a temperature reaches 88 degrees, that section of the building or that room needs to be closed down by law. If an entire building, let's just say we have power outage and the whole building reaches 88 degrees, then that building needs to be closed. Students need to be sent home. That is the new law. I'm not shy about telling you when I have an issue with a law. My issue is that we will be sending students from an area and an environment where they're safe, can be monitored, home to environments that might be hotter than 88 degrees, where there might not be any food readily available to them. But again, the prescription of the law is as it is. So this policy now puts into place what the law is prescribing. So keep in mind, for all of those days that we have counted as inclement closing days, right? Those are really called snow days, for when it snows, those days may now have to be preserved. Like for instance, when we had that extended weekend for Memorial Day because we gave the inclement closing days back, those days may now need to be preserved in case we have to close the school in the warmer months of the year due to this new heat index. So the community needs to be aware of that. As of right now, it's pretty hard to get a room to 88 degrees, but it's not impossible. So we want everyone to be aware of what this means for the school district. And with that, I'll turn it over for a conversation. Yeah, sure.
It sounds like we haven't yet gotten to the point where we would have had to have enacted this in our district. Dr. Ellis, is that accurate?
We have not had any issues in recent history where we would have to close an entire school, to my knowledge. Have we?
No.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask.
Very, very close at a couple locations, but
Okay.
not an entire building. But later this week, we're expected to be in the upgraded, so there will be rooms that reach that, but it's not enacted until September.
So for the community who would not have been able to hear Mr. Watkins' response, not in recent history have we come to this position where we've had to close the entire building because it's reached 88 degrees, but we have come to the situation where specific places within a building had to have been closed. And for those of you who are not monitoring the weather, we are expecting to have 90-degree weather by the end of this week. So this is big time.
So just a follow-up on that, which is, it might be useful as we get to hotter and hotter days, into June in particular, to understand, to mitigate the point that you made, Dr. Reynolds, about students who may be being sent home to even hotter circumstances. What we could possibly do, whether it's sending to another school location or a library or partnering with the city in terms of polling centers, et cetera, just to get sort of line up, understand what we could do with our families so that students are not in the situation that you outlined. If there's a possibility, it would be good to have that, to understand what would be possible, because I agree that that thought child to a even hotter space where they're not being supervised and where they don't have food or water available to them easily, feels dangerous in a different way.
Just a question around, and I guess it is building level, but do we, or will we have to come to some point where how we build in extra snow days so that it's sort of accommodating for the extra heat days?
I love the question. You're going to dislike the answer. Building extra days into our schedule is currently not tenable. Keeping in mind we are required to have 180 days of instruction. If we close any day, and I'll use an example because we actually had this as a reality. There was last year, Trinity School lost power. It was scheduled to come back on during the school day, but we did not want to take the risk, so we closed Trinity School by itself. The rest of the district was open. It just so happened the way the calendar worked out, we had exactly 180 days of school that year, except for Trinity. Trinity only had 179 days of school. The way the law is prescribed, for every day of school, less than 180 days, you lose state funding. For that one day, it cost the district about $30,000 for the school not being open in terms of state funding that we lost.
Is that prorated by school?
That's prorated by school, population, student count, things of that nature. What we as superintendents are trying to do is work with our commissioner of education to try to have the number of days required for to be counted as a full day, a full year, reduced. Because in addition, we're also adding holidays to our calendar, which makes it a lot more difficult to reserve days for inclement weather and closings.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I guess the other thing is I know that Memorial Day, sometimes we add, give them a couple extra days because we may use the school days, but maybe one of those days gets pushed out later because of heat days or something. I don't know. But something to think about.
Yes, definitely.
We have to come up with provisions of early dismissal. I was under the impression we don't tend to do that. Once the students are at school, they're at school, particularly with the new transportation, it's going to be an active. That's something that we need to think through.
Yes, we definitely will. It's actually easier to call an early dismissal than it is to have a late start in this district. So that is definitely something that's going to have to be on our plan.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
Yes. Because I looked it up when I saw 82 degrees, I said, well, 82 degrees isn't that hot. And, I learned that extreme heat is usually refers to an outdoor temperature of 90 to 100 degrees. However, as indoor temperature of 82 degrees Fahrenheit is not considered extreme heat in all contexts, but in school settings, especially in classrooms without proper ventilation or air conditioning, it can be uncomfortably warm and potentially unsafe, particularly for children, staff with health conditions, or prolonged stays in the hot environment. So I was thinking that we would need to do an assessment of the air conditioners that are in the buildings, where they're located in the rooms, and also if they appropriately cool the rooms. So, you can have an air conditioner in the room, but if it's not big enough to cool the room, then it doesn't really work. And then also the location of the air conditioner. If it's right under the sun, even if the air conditioner is on and you have glass windows, it's still very hot in the room. And, the policy gives common sense things like, once it hits 82 degrees Fahrenheit to turn off lights, put on a fan, take water breaks, and open a window, and things like that. So then we would need to also make sure that all of our windows open appropriately. Also, to really take stock of, I don't know if we need thermostats in the room to really understand how hot it is. What is it, like 3 feet from the floor in the middle? Yeah, so those kinds of things. So, with this policy,
Trustee Williams, please keep in mind, everything that we do is regulated by state law. So it may sound as easy, and I've actually had offerings from our PTAs that they would buy as many air conditioners as needed, but it's not that simple. Every air conditioning unit that comes into a school has to be state approved for the wattage use, BTUs, and square footage. There's actually a prescribed formula for what type of air conditioner can be utilized in a school space. Now, with the provision of this law, maybe those laws will change a little bit, but I will always look to our Director of Facilities, Mr. Keith Watkins, who is very well versed, number one. Number two, has a very close relationship with those policy and lawmakers as it relates to facilities. But it is not as simple as just buying an air conditioner, otherwise we could fix that, pretty, well, no, we can't. It could be proposed to be fixed pretty quickly, but it is such a harrowing process right now that this is just a monkey wrench in everything that it is that we can do until everything is taken into consideration in totality.
Just very quickly, whether it's for this law or the two we talked about today or any other ones in the future, Dr. Owens, if you need the board to advocate on our behalf or for the behalf of this region, feel free to reach out to us.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we are going to move on to our public comment period of the evening. The Board of Education adopted policy 1230 in April 2022 to ensure all members of the public have the opportunity to speak at both of our board meetings each month. We believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues. Having said that, please know that the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, understand the board will not respond to your concerns and questions tonight. We take your concerns and questions seriously and want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will, however, respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting where the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. I also want to point out that under state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel and students. Please know, however, that we take personal concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask you to go through the appropriate administrative channels. Finally, we recognize that right now our nation and our community are polarized on a number of issues. That said, we want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. We ask that speakers please address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. In the likely event the meeting becomes unruly, the board will recess the meeting and return its order has been restored. Finally, I want to remind everyone that you may submit written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period, if you so choose. Tonight, we've set aside 30 minutes for public comment, where each speaker who signed up before 3:30 today has 3 minutes to speak. If a person requests to speak after 3:30, speakers may sign up a person at the meeting with the clerk and will be afforded the opportunity to speak. Our first speaker of the night is Mr. Vincent Malfitano.
Well, good evening. A couple things. First of all, somebody brought to my attention that during the last election, I don't know what school, a couple of folks were outside the 100-foot limit of one school advocating for a candidate. And I guess somebody got pissed or whatever and called the police on them. This lady from the NAACP, very distraught about having a police called on her. You'd like to have civil elections in our town. And over the years, I've seen a lot of people breaking those rules, and it's ugly stuff. But I hope the folks around town try not to do that stuff anymore and get the police to go hassle people. A couple things. I don't see the election results for the write-in candidates. I know there may be an issue getting that corrected. Hopefully it'll be published at another time. Another thing, I do appreciate your response to my inquiry. I forwarded to you the rather incredible flyer from the library announcing announcing that a drag queen, again, is coming to the library, paid for by the donations of people, friends of the library, to come and read stories to 3 to 8-year-olds. It's a national movement, international movement, well-funded, to basically, what's the word, educate our children. But I do know that this is also happening in public schools. So I was wondering, and I asked whether we've ever had a drag queen story hour in any of our elementary schools. Have we ever had a drag queen come and make a presentation to any of our students for any reason? I'd like to know whether we see that as something we want to educate our children about. And the response I got was, no, not so far, about this particular thing. But that's not an inclusive statement to me. So I'd like to know more specifically whether our district has invited a drag queen to ever come onto our school property to educate our children. Another thing that I found somewhat concerning, I was looking in today's paper about the many schools around our state and in the country where young girls have been denied their proper place on a podium in races because a boy decided to say, I'm a girl and I'm going to compete. Girls have lost scholarships, have lost opportunities, and have lost their dignity because of this stupidity where a guy can say, I'm a girl and I'm going to compete in your sports. Maybe it's in there. Tell me, what is the district policy? If a boy says, I'm a girl now, can he run on the girls' track team? I'd like to know. Maybe you can tell me that before I leave. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malfitano. Would anyone else like to sign up for public comment tonight? Dr. Rose, is there my question?
Good evening. In looking at the two state three of them, but the two state policies that you spent the most amount of time on, I want to encourage the board to look at some of the language that appears to be some loopholes. So with respect to the students and personal electronic devices, Dr. Reynolds, you mentioned that the district is not responsible for stolen, lost, etc., except that it says generally, which suggests that there might be some times where it is. So I think that there's some important places there to really clarify. I also think that in the same spirit of that, we need to think about what are the loopholes or the general language in the policies that could be exploited in the interest of the students and the district. So for example, you mentioned Angel devices, which Ms. Otilia explained to me what those are. I think it's important for the district to find ways to ensure that we're advocating for devices and then providing parents and families with the supports in order to advocate for inclusion of devices that are going to be necessary to keep kids safe. In terms of the extreme heat conditions, again, I think there's some loophole language where the 88 degrees, it says when practicable, which seems like a legal loophole as well. So again, where possible to exploit that. Going back to the cell phone policy, I think it's important, as all of the board members and the superintendent has said, to really engage in conversations with stakeholders around how these policies get enacted. But I wonder, we know that this was coming down the pike, if these conversations have already been happening in the schools, and if not, the clock is ticking, and we certainly don't want families to come back at the start of the school year and be hit with policies that are brand new, and there's going to be an uproar. I'm curious about how the funding is tied to this policy. Is there particular funding that's earmarked from the state that says you'll get this funding, and this funding is going to go to supporting the implementation of this policy? I would certainly caution us against making investments into solutions without, extreme vetting. I know in New York City there's lots of different pouches and, all of those things. So if we can reduce those costs and investments, that would be ideal. I also recognize that we don't want to create conflicts where adults in the schools are, arguing with kids about handing in their cell phones. But something that I've said time and time again at board meetings is the importance of cultivating relationships. And when you have relationships with the students in your schools, then those scenarios tend to not escalate into conflict. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. McCutcheon. Would anybody else like to sign up for public comment tonight? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the next item of the agenda. Next up is our new business consent agenda personnel resolutions. Colleagues, can I get a motion and second to approve consent agenda for personnel resolutions number 25-389, 1 through 5, number 25-390, 1 through 17, number 25-391, 1 through 4, and number 25-392, 1 through 18, according to the recommended action for each item.
So moved. Second, Castellano.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is our new business consent agenda general resolutions. Colleagues, can I get a, one second. Colleagues, we're going to do a consent agenda, then we have 3 roll call votes. So can I get a motion and a second to approve, a motion and second to approve consent agenda for general resolutions number 25-393 through number 25-405, according to the recommended action. It is 402, okay, let me read that, sorry. Approve consent agenda for general resolutions number 25-393 through number 25-402, according to the recommended action for each item.
Second, Castellano.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So our first roll call resolution is the approved resolution number 25-403, which are going to be authorizing the issuance of a tax anticipation note. So colleagues, can I get a motion in a second to approve resolution number 25-403?
So moved, Roth.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Iannuzzi?
Yes.
Ms. Ferris Brooks?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Castellano Minaya? Yes. Ms. Clayton Fernandez?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Single?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Motion carries. Colleagues, can I get a motion in a second to approve resolution number 25-404, confirming tax lists and levying taxes required for the city school district of the city of New Rochelle, New York for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026, and directing the execution and delivery of a warrant for the collection of the taxes extended on the tax list.
So moved, Brooks.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Iannuzzi?
Yes.
Ms. Ferris Brooks?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Castellano Minaya? Yes. Ms. Clayton Fernandez?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Single?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Motion carries. Our last resolution, colleagues, can I get a motion and a second to approve resolution number 25-405?
So moved, Castellano.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Iannuzzi?
Yes.
Ms. Ferris Brooks?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Castellano Minaya? Yes. Ms. Clayton Fernandez?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Single?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Motion carries. So our next meeting will be on Tuesday, June 17th at City Hall, and it will be our last meeting for our 2 colleagues, Ms. Brooks and Ms. Castellano, where there will be a reception after the meeting, so please make sure you attend. Colleagues, can I get a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting?
So moved, Williams.